Hey, welcome back to the Crazy Coop House Farm podcast. Today we're talking to Laura Lee Dooley from the Sweet Summer Breeze Homestead. Here's our conversation with Laura Lee.
My name is Laura Lee Dooley. My farm is Sweet Summer Breeze Homestead. We're located in Antrim, Nova Scotia. And we farm Berkshire pigs, ducks, broilers, rabbits, layers. And that's about it for right now.
So how did you two get into farming?
I grew up in agriculture. My grandfathers are both farmers, and my dad's a farmer. My uncle's a farmer. So really, it was kind of a path that I was almost destined to take. My husband, not so much. My husband jokes, and he says he's just the silent partner.
Do you guys have a future plan for your farm, like where you see it now versus in a few years from now? Do you have anything you want to add to your farm?
Yeah, we definitely want to get some dairy cows and some beef cows, mainly for personal use. With a dairy cow, I'd start doing cheeses and yogurts and fresh milk. Oh, and a donkey, yes. Yeah, we got to get a donkey too. Yeah. And then I would love to get into breeding cooney pigs. They're more. Okay, Keela, you need to go, honey. Okay, thank you. They're more sustainable, especially for smaller homesteads. They do take a lot longer to grow out, but they're a grazing animal. So I think that they would be perfect to add for like my year-long animal, opposed to my Berkshires, which are only here for about half a year. Mommy's on the phone. Watch out. Go see the kids. Sorry.
No problem. What are some struggles you guys have run into while farming? I know farming's not always the cute ducklings running around in the beautiful pastures. So what are some struggles you guys have found while you guys have been farming?
Farming with small kids is definitely probably one of the biggest struggles.
Yeah.
They're something that should take you an hour to do, might end up taking 2 to 3 hours to do because they need you to do something or there's been a meltdown. So that's definitely been probably our biggest struggle, is to try to I always try to incorporate the kids with the farming. But sometimes they don't want to do that. And well, kids are just kids. So I have to accommodate to them as well as the farm animals. Also, like the rising cost of feed, that's been really difficult at times. Like my broilers are all organic fed, and the price of organic feed has gone up almost $10 a bag this year. So that adds a lot of extra cost. Also, when you're used to every year, I do that kind of the same thing with my broilers. And this year I had a really slow grow rate with my broilers this year. And it's just whatever they were crossed with, it took me longer to grow out. So that's more money that's going into them than anticipated.
Yeah.
So definitely trying to budget for the farm, because you'll never get rich off of farming.
No.
But you kind of make it all work. You figure things out and figure out ways to supplement. And we grow big gardens as well, so we try to supplement a lot with our garden. If an animal gets sick, I grow medicinal herbs, so we try to stay all on natural, holistic, organic side of that as well to treat the animals.
Yeah. How does that compare, do you find, or have you ever used medications from vets? Do you find they compare similarly, or does one method work a bit better than the other in your experience?
On my farm animals, I've never actually used any Sorry, no. I had one pig that had an enlarged esophagus or mega esophagus, which means that their esophagus, they swallowed something and their esophagus stretched, but it didn't shrink back to the size it was supposed to be. So she would
Yeah.
eat and throw up constantly. Um, I did have to get a steroid to help shrink that back down, but we only had to give her 1 or 2 shots.
Yeah.
Um, but I did incorporate a new feeding program for her. I set up a new feeding station where everything was elevated, everything was soaked, so that she was getting smaller amounts of food in. She had her own station away from all the other pigs, and just to allow her to heal naturally. So, in that contrast, it did work really good with like the vet pharmaceuticals. But for everything else, I've always done natural, um, old school farming because that's how I grew up. Like my grandfathers and stuff, they did everything old school. You didn't have a vet to run to then, so you had to figure out what remedies you had at home to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they take longer. Like
Yeah.
they definitely take longer than like an antibiotic shot or something like that. But in the long run, I found the animal came out a lot better with the natural approach. There was no side effects from going natural.
Yeah. Um, so from that pig, is that where you guys started doing your wet feeding with your animals?
It is. That's what started me from soaking my feed. Like I used to ferment feed for my chickens, and I didn't notice. Oh, I also did like apple cider vinegar in the water, and I also do garlic, and I wasn't seeing an overall huge change in the fermented to the just soaking it. So now what I do is I soak our feed, and all that does is it allows it to open up what nutrients are in it. Because when they process it, it is heat processed and then it's pressurized into those pellets. So they're not actually utilizing a lot of nutrients that is in their food, but when you soak it, it releases those nutrients, allows it for better digestibility. It increases your feed at least double to triple the size. And hydration, especially with the summer, it was hard to keep up with water, but by soaking their feed, I found that they weren't drinking as much water because they were getting it in their feed.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of more people soaking their feed since that post you had commented on.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, Kim Weir says she's liking it, and a couple other farmers I've seen starting soaking their feed. I don't have enough hog pans here to soak all my feed, but I'd like to give it a shot.
It really does. It works phenomenal, I find. It takes a few extra minutes in the morning because you have to wait for it to absorb the water, but that gives me extra time to run buckets of water to all the animals.
Yeah. So, what are some products you guys produce from your farm?
Well, we sell farm gate, so we sell our eggs farm gate and we sell our pork products. Um, Eventually, I would like to get into being able to produce my own meat on my farm. Of course, being government inspected, that way I could sell like my duck and my poultry as well. Right now, there's so many guidelines and restrictions to that, and where we process all our own meat that way. Like any of the fowl is processed on farm, where our pork is we send it to Dickie's and then Withrows packages it for us.
And what do you find the cost difference where you have to sell your pork with the butchering fee rather than without? What would you say the cost difference would be in your meat if you could do it on your own?
If I could do it on my own, I could probably drop at least a couple dollars a pound easily. Um, Compared to because it's the travel because it has to go to Amherst to get there. So there's gas money. Luckily, I don't have to pay for trailering. My father trailers all my animals for me, and then the meat you're packing, wrapping, that all has to come into account as well. And of course, like poultry is a lot less expensive, I find, in the processing, but it costs about $5 a bird to process them at the processor. So you'd be able to sell them for quite a bit less being able to do it on the farm.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a few, nothing really to sell, just for our own use, right? And getting the hang of things. And I find I can raise them pretty cheap doing it by myself, but seeing the prices that you got to take them to the butcher for, I don't know that I'd actually ever be able to sell meat.
I don't see how $5 a bird, and then your cost to get there and gas. So average it out, you're looking at about $7 a bird. And
Yeah,
to me, like that's just your cost for processing them, not including your feed and things like that as well.
yeah, you're feeding your time.
Yeah. And like it takes a while to process. Like we used to do like 50 birds at a time, and now we've just gone to, okay, we'll get 10 done this day, we'll get maybe 20 done this day. We just take our time at it, because pretty much it's for personal use. We do give some to family and friends that want it, but if I was going to sell it, it'd be so much easier to sell it off the farm, especially
Yeah.
where I do it anyways.
Do you have a spot on your farm or a thing on your farm that when you look at it, you know this is why you're farming, your favorite part of the farm?
Every time I walk out my back door,
Yeah.
it's just, I look at it, it's just the way my husband and I have it built and set up, and it's forever growing and changing, and it's my happy place. Um it's the one place that I don't get stressed. Like if I have a stressful day, to go out and just to do night chores, that just makes me feel so much better, just being out among all the animals and being in amongst all the farm. And the way my farm is set up, it just gradually goes one to another, so everything's close together but not too close together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It kind of has a flow to each animal, and it just keeps it's growing even bigger and bigger. And one of the reasons we have pigs is they keep clearing our land so that we can keep producing more on the farm.
Yeah. What are some things that you guys grow in your gardens, or do you have a greenhouse too?
That was supposed to be on the agenda for this year. Haven't got around to it. Next year for sure. This year's supposed to be a barn as well, so we'll have a new barn, new greenhouse. We just tore an old barn down, so that took a lot of time
Hmm.
there. Um, but I grow a lot of staple food for our family, like carrots and beets and turnips. Kale, I dehydrate kale. So then I have that all over the winter, and I just add it to sauces and meat. I just add it to everything. So we're always having something green in our diet. Um, Beans, tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, those type of things. But I also grow medicinal herbs. So I have um, L campaign and yarrow, which I actually use a lot with my children if they have fevers. It helps bring their fevers down to at a slow rate. My children suffer from febrile seizures from fevers, so yarrow is something that I always have on hand, and my children can actually pick it out and tell me what it is and what it's for. What I grow, goldenrod just grows naturally on my property anyways, but I use that. It's really good for the skin. And what else do I have in my garden? I have other medicinal herbs as well, chamomile, um, marshmallow root, muskmallow, all those type of things. And I'll eventually start adding more and more herbs because I do study herbalism. So to be able to produce my medicines on my land is very important too.
Yeah. And this new barn you want to build, what is that, a pig barn or a chicken barn or a combination of
A storage barn.
storage barn?
Yeah, it's just we have, and to be able to put chicks, because right now I do all my meat chicks, all my ducklings when they first start out, they're down in my basement.
Yeah.
And we all know how yucky chicks can get very quickly.
Yeah.
So, and ducklings too. Like ducklings are just so messy.
Ducklings,
So
I always try and raise with the mothers because I can't brood ducklings. It's too much. Like you got to clean that brooder almost twice a day.
yeah, pretty
But
much.
when they're outside with their mom, it's a bit cleaner.
Oh, it is. Yeah, once they're old enough and they're starting to get their feathers, I send them out with uh, with the rest of the flock. And I actually, my brooder is a huge kiddie pool
Yeah.
that I put fencing up and around, so it keeps them in. But with the meat birds, it's just they generate so much heat and so much dust, and so with the new barn, I'll be able to put them out there. And also, all my feed is stored in my basement, so to be able to have all of that in one location would be so much easier and make my husband a lot happier.
Yeah, we have a similar setup. We have the feed downstairs, the chicks downstairs, the incubators downstairs, our chicken hospital downstairs, or we've brought ducks into the bathtub. So
Yeah.
always my bathtub, that is. Never Mom or Aaron's bathtub, but my
I
animals.
I have
My
a baby bathtub, so I that's one thing I held on after I had all my kids, and it comes in handy because it's a huge one. So I lucked out on that.
yeah. So you were talking before about farming with your kids. On your farm, how does family play a role in the farm, and how does it influence the way the farm runs?
It's a family farm, so everybody's involved. If I say I have a sick or injured animal, the first one over is my oldest. She wants to be a vet when she grows up, so anything that's a learning opportunity, she's there. She's helping me. She's got gloves on. She's got, okay, mom, what do I have to get? What do I have to do? My youngest, she is my chicken catcher, my duck catcher. That child can catch anything. She's been doing it since the time she could first start walking. But she takes part in daily chores. I cannot leave the house without her. If I do, it's a complete meltdown. She comes, she helps wet down the feed. She helps me fill up the water buckets. She lets the ducklings out. She lets the broilers out. She hugs them. She kisses them. She dances with them. She sings to them. So they're very, very happy. And then my other two children, they really tend to be very happy around like the pigs. So my son, my grandfather bought him a pig this year for him to raise, and then he gets to sell his pig, and then of course keep the money. And so he's learning more about farming and marketing that way. And then my little girl Fiona, she's more into she likes the animals, she likes to visit them and talk to them, but she likes to be in the garden. So she's the one that comes in and helps me pick things, and also to tell me like when things are ready to be picked, and um, just she sees the beauty in everything. So she's a nice a nice addition to have, like, oh mom, come look at this, this is so beautiful, look at how this is blooming. So it kind of makes you stop and appreciate the small things.
Yeah, lots of farm hands then. Never have to
Oh
worry
yeah.
about the eggs not getting collected.
Not at all, no. And they're all good. Like if something's happening, something's wrong, they're all there. Like if I say, okay, all hands on deck, guys, I need this done, we need to do this, you grab that. We have a neighbor's kid down the road, it's up here a lot, she jumps into action as well. Okay, let's do this. No questions asked. They're ready to go, which is nice.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for farmers just starting off or wanting to take a leap into small backyard flock that might or likely develop into a big farm? Because that's how it always goes.
Like the chicken math.
Yeah, math,
Uh,
goat math.
yeah. I would say definitely start off small. Get to know your animal before you add anything else. Once you know the characteristics of the animal, the ins and outs of your daily husbandry of the animal, any problems that could arise, what would your options be? How are you going to handle it? Because especially when you're new, a lot of times those things are going to happen, and it's a good learning experience because then you know how to deal with it later on. And research what you're getting. What are your options for your feed, for your health of the animal, for your housing, um, and do what feels right. Like everybody farms differently. And as long as you're looking after that animal and you're giving them the best life possible, then you can't do anything wrong, really.
Where have your sources of research come from? Books or Facebook, or just past knowledge from your family?
Past knowledge from my family. My grandfather raised chickens. He also raised pigs. He slaughtered all his own broilers, even made his own plucker, things like that. And then my other grandfather is a beef breeder, so he breeds. They were big for 4-H. They were the main 4-H barn. So I got a lot of information just on the daily running of a farm from them. But also I have my animal sciences, and I've worked in the pet industry since my early 20s. So, and just working on farms. Like my first job was baling hay at my uncle's farm, and I spent lots of time there. So, a lot of hands on knowledge and books. Like, I love to read, I love to research things. And I try to go a lot on like scientific studies and things like that, but also on holistic approaches as well. And there's so much information and knowledge out there. You just gotta look for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk. We were talking before. You said you don't have any social media for your guys' farm yet, but you said you're working on that soon.
Yes.
So as soon as you guys have that, let me know and I'll share it with the post, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Laura Lee at the Sweet Summer Breeze Homestead. Make sure to follow us for more podcasts, and if you are interested in joining the podcast, be sure to reach out. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.